one fateful day, in a volcanic area known as the 14 Fires, they made a shattering discovery.
What?
Dragons.
Dragons. I knew it was going to be dragons. I didn't want to guess and look stupid, but I thought it was going to be the D word. Dragons. Hey guys, welcome to David vs. Film. I am David, yo soy David, and tonight I'm going head to head with Game of Thrones Season 1 History and Lore. A big hey, hi, and hello to all of you, but to returning viewers and especially returning subscribers, what's up? I gotta tell you guys, I'm really intrigued about this Histories and Lore. This is something I didn't know about until y'all told us. With Mark and I are watching Season 1, which, by the way, Mark apologizes he couldn't be here. I know it's just me. He's gonna watch all the Game of Thrones episodes, I promise, but unfortunately for this tonight, he's got some stuff going on with work that he had to focus on before that comes up. So he couldn't be here, but he sends his love, and I will share everything I learn here with him so that we can be more educated as we go into Season 2. I haven't done a lot of background research on this. I only know what y'all have told us, and from what you've said, this kind of fills in the gaps of some of the things that we might not have garnered from Season 1 of Game of Thrones. So in other words, there's a lot of material in the books from George R.R. Martin that obviously can't be addressed in just 10 one-hour episodes of a TV show. And what this seeks to do is kind of fill in those gaps, from what I understand. So if that's the case, I am really, really excited about that because I like trivia, I like backstory, I like learning the history of things. I'm a total nerd for that. So yeah, as much as I love the show, I can't get enough, and I think this will be great. I do have a tumbler full of peach tea, although I don't think it's going to be that kind of video. Who knows? We'll see. I think this is going to be more educational. I'm kind of taking it that way, like a student aspect, right? But I will also say, even though this is kind of an unorthodox video, and I'm excited about that if you do want to see the early unedited versions of the regular videos we do, as well as the early version of something like this, for example, you can check out our Patreon at patreon.com/DaveVsFilm. We have Discord benefits over there, polls, and more. So like I said, be sure to take a look if you'd like. I appreciate our patrons over there, and I certainly appreciate you here on YouTube. Like, share, subscribe, all those things that are completely free to you that really do help out the channel. So thank you in advance for those. And last but not least, if we're not friends on Instagram, let's be friends. I'll leave a link to my Instagram down below. All right, if you guys are ready, be sure to stick around for the after party at the end of the reaction. But for now, let's grab our hymnals, turn to page 2011, I think it is. I think that's when this came out, and watch Game of Thrones Season 1, Histories and Lore.
In the dawn age of Westeros, before the coming of man and the raising of castles and cities, there were only the children of the forest.
So we're going way back
Little is known of them now, but it is said they were small in stature, dark and beautiful, and no taller than children when grown to manhood. They lived in the depths of the forests and hidden villages, crannogs and caves. They hunted with weirwood bows and armed themselves with blades of obsidian.
Okay, weirwood bows. So it's like the tree, the weirwood trees, right?
And were possessed of powerful magic. They worshipped nameless, faceless gods of the forest, stream, and stone. Okay. According to legend,
I got my notebook,
it was they
taking it seriously,
in the great white trunks of the majestic weirwoods. Their deep-cut eyes were red with sap and ever watchful. 12,000 years ago, the first men came from the eastern continent, crossing a land bridge called the Arm of Dawn. Riding their great horses and wielding weapons of bronze, they cut down the children's forests and weirwoods. A terrible war raged between the children and the first men that lasted for centuries.
Centuries?
The two races sought an end to the years of horror and bloodshed. They met on a small isle in the centre of a great lake called the God's Eye.
Okay.
It was there they forged the pact. The first men would be granted dominion over the coastland, the mountains, the high plains and the bogs, but the deep forest would forever belong to the children, and no weirwood tree would ever again fall to man's axe.
Okay, so they're sacred then. The weirwood trees are sacred. Got it. All right, that's the face trees.
Children carved a face in every weirwood tree on the island.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, the faces.
Which came to be known as the Isle of Faces. But the pack could not withstand the coming of the Andals.
That was scary at night.
A race of tall, fair-haired warriors. They attacked with fire and weapons of steel, slaughtering the children of the forest wherever they could find them. burning out their weirwood groves, hacking away at the faces of the old gods, and
Oh,
spreading their own religion through the land. Centuries of war followed, and the Andals conquered every kingdom in Westeros, save one.
oh my
The
God.
North.
Oh, there you
Kings
go.
of Winter
And
were
that's
able
why
to
there's so many
withstand the Andal
that
invasion.
worship the old gods
Descendants
there.
of the first men dwell there to this day, and continue to worship the old gods.
Yeah, because we
As
heard
for the
Ned talking
children
about
of
the old
forest,
gods and Catelyn and
those
the
who
new
survived
gods.
the slaughter were said to have fled far north and have not been seen again. Most assume they're long dead, and some don't believe they ever existed. They live on only through song and legend, and in the faces of the weirwood trees.
The blood. Interesting. Okay, I like that. And I like that that's being narrated by the actors.
When Aegon the
characters,
Conqueror
but,
invaded Westeros, he had 7 kingdoms to contend with. The Kingdom of the North, the Kingdom of the Mountain and the Vale, the Iron Islands, the Kingdom of the Rock, the Kingdom of the Reach, the Stormlands, and Dorne. These regions had been established by the first men thousands of years before, in the Age of Heroes.
Mark knows Dorne
One
because
hero
they
of
always
the
keep talking about the
Stable
wine
Age
coming
was
from
Bran
Dorne,
the
Dornish
Good.
wine. And you know, he
Bran
loves his
raised the
wine.
wall and built the stronghold of Winterfell, establishing House Stark and reigning as the first king in the north. Other legends tell of the Grey King in the Iron Islands. Grey King took a mermaid to wife and defeated Naga, the first sea dragon. House Greyjoy of Pike, the current rulers of the region, claim to descend from him. House Casterly ruled the gold-rich Westerlands from their mighty seat of Casterly Rock.
Okay,
But
the
their land and
Lannisters. There you
power
go.
was swindled from them by the legendary trickster, Lann the Clever. The noble house of Lannister is said to have descended from him. The verdant and fertile lands of the Reach were first ruled by House Gardener, whose founder, known as Garth Greenhand, wore a crown of flowers and vines. He ruled from Highgarden as the first king of the Reach, and was said to have made the land bloom. Many noble houses trace their
This is
bloodlines
really
back to him,
interesting.
including the current lords of Highgarden, House Tyrell. In the Stormlands,
Oh, I call it
according to
Tyrell.
ballads
Tyrell.
of the age,
Okay.
a warrior named Durin fell in love with Elenai, whose father was god of the sea and
Titties.
mother was goddess of the wind. She gave her maidenhead to him, committing herself to a mortal life. Enraged, her parents called upon the winds and waters, destroying Darren's Bayside keep and wiping out his wedding guests. Darren
illustrations
declared
are really
war
good
on
in
the
this too,
gods
by the
and
way.
rebuilt his keep,
Very good.
which was also destroyed. 4 more castles he raised, each stronger than the last. All fell to the power of the gods. But Darren's 7th castle, Storm's End, withstood the gods' rage. Darren became known as Darren
Storm's
Godspeed
End.
and reigned as the first Storm King.
The 7th castle, and that one
There are
survived.
countless other tales from the Age of Heroes, too many to count. These histories
Age of
weren't
Heroes.
recorded in a book, but passed down from generation to generation through story and song. And while some of them may be dismissed as fairy tales, every one of the 7 kingdoms is defined by them.
It's a lot to take in, but it's really good. Valyrian the Dragons by Visitors. Oh,
East
okay,
of
Visitors.
Westeros lies the smoking sea, where no ship dares sail. There are those who swear it to be demon-haunted.
Viserys is a
and
dick,
who's to
but
say
like
they're
his
wrong?
voice is really soothing
For it was there,
and very good for
thousands
voiceover.
of years ago, that a cataclysmic event occurred, destroying one of the great civilizations in history.
What was it?
The precise details of their origins are lost to us. But it is said the Valyrians were once a modest community of shepherds, tending their flocks on a small peninsula of the great eastern continent. One fateful day, in a volcanic area known as the 14 Fires, they made a shattering discovery.
What?
Dragons.
Dragons. I
They
knew
were
it was going to be dragons. I didn't want to
monstrous,
guess.
scaly creatures
It
with
looked
massive
stupid,
wings, sharp
but I
claws,
thought it was
and
going to be the D
fiery
word.
breath. They were also said to have a deep-rooted connection to magic. In time, the Valyrians were able to tame the beasts. Harnessing their immense power, they established a city of wonder, unlike any before or since. They became skilled at sorcery and metallurgy, creating uncommon weapons of spell-forged steel.
The Valyrians.
Wielding these weapons astride their dragons, the Valyrians conquered the surrounding lands and slowly expanded west. At the time, the Giscari Empire dominated much of the great eastern continent and tried to stop Valeria's expansion.
Giscari, I don't know
The
them.
Giscari legions attacked the Valerians 5
I
times,
recall anyway.
but could never defeat them. Finally, the Valerians marched on their capital, Old Gis, and obliterated it, turning its streets and buildings to ash with dragon flame, and wiping the Giscari people and their culture off the face of the earth.
Kind of the thing, you know.
The freehold of Valeria, as it came to be known, became the most advanced civilization in the known world, with its own language, gods, and culture. The Valerians' reach extended far and wide, covering most of the continent. Great cities were built and roadways paved, all of which led back to Valeria. The freehold would prosper for nearly 5,000 years. But it was not to last.
Well, it lasted a
An event
while.
that became known only as
Credit
the
where credit's due.
laid waste to the Valerians, their capital city, and its surrounding lands. The peninsula itself was shattered, becoming what is now the Smoking Sea. Every
The
dragon
Smoking
was thought to be
Sea.
lost, as were
This
the
is just
Valerian
brilliant.
spells, knowledge,
How do you
and
come up with
recorded
this stuff?
history.
This is what happens
Thus,
when you eat
the
salsa
mighty
and you go to
empire
bed and you
collapsed.
have these crazy dreams and you write it
What
down.
caused this cataclysm? No one knows for certain. Some say it was a volcanic eruption. Others say the Valerians' own sorcery got the better of them. In any event, the doom's devastation of the Valerian people was total, with the exception of a small rocky island in the narrow sea. Dragonstone.
Which one? Dragonstone.
For it was there that the Targaryens,
Okay.
the last of old Valyria, dwelled. They would lie in wait for another 100 years before unleashing the fury of the dragon on
Great
another
illustration.
continent, Westeros.
Westeros. That was a good one. Okay, The History of the Night's Watch by Lord Commander Marmont.
Night gathers,
Sir.
and now my watch begins. It shall not end until my death. I shall take no wife, hold no lands, father no children. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. I shall live and die in my post. I am the sword in the darkness. I am the watcher on the walls. I am the shield that guards the realms of men. I pledge my life and honor to the Night's Watch, for this night and all the nights to come. Legend.
So as they would say, a servant's heart, you know. I know we have also the prisoners, but then the ones who do this because they really just want to, servant's heart.
It came to be known as the Long Night. In the midst of this darkness, the White Walkers emerged from the far north. With their armies of the dead, they waged war against the living, laying waste to villages and holdfasts.
Fuck
leaving
that.
terror and destruction in their wake.
Look at that.
After
Again,
years
broken record, but the
brutal
illustrations are
conflict
really
and
good.
unbearable loss, an alliance of the first men and the children of the forest managed to drive the walkers and their minions back into the frigid northern wastelands from whence they came.
Whence?
To prevent another invasion, the first men erected the wall.
Okay, so the first men built the... Because I was wondering who built the wall. So the first men built the wall. I didn't know or couldn't remember.
Mountains in the west to the Bay of Seals in the east. It was a structure unlike any ever built. Indeed,
real.
some maintain it could only have been completed with the aid of giants, or using the powerful magic of the ancient children of the forest.
Who were living up there,
required
right?
To guard and maintain it, and thus the Night's Watch was born. A sworn brotherhood, tasked with defending the realms of men against the dark forces that lay beyond. Upon taking his vows, a brother of the Night's Watch serves for life. It is a life of hardship and great sacrifice, so the oath must not be taken lightly. The punishment for desertion is death. The Night's Watch is divided into 3 vital branches: the Rangers, the Builders, and the Stewards. While all black brothers...
Because John was all upset that he couldn't be a ranger. That's what he wanted to be, right?
The rangers,
remember, he was very upset about that.
Warriors,
yeah, right. And he thinks he's like a warrior.
Centuries come and gone, and although the White Walkers have yet to return, another threat has emerged. Barbarian tribes known as wildlings. The rangers are charged with defending the realm against these lawless savages. The builders are carpenters, masons, miners, and woodsmen.
Look, no offense to the wildlings, very scary.
Keeps,
you're like, you scare me, don't get me wrong. But the fucking White Walkers, I feel like is the priority. You know, the armies of the undead, you had me there, okay?
They tend to the horses and messenger ravens, sow clothing, gather firewood.
It's very dramatic.
Bring supplies up from the south. The Night's Watch is a diverse group. Proud volunteers from noble houses stand side by side with petty thieves conscripted from dungeons.
Right, there you go, exactly.
Class distinctions are left behind, as are past misdeeds. A man gets what he earns on the wall.
So clean slate.
Even the lowliest gutter snipe can rise up in rank if he proves himself worthy. For thousands of years, the brothers of the Night's Watch have stood their lonely vigil. As the seasons changed, as brutal wars raged in the south, as dynasties rose and fell, the Night's Watch endured. We are the swords in the darkness. We are the watchers on the wall. We
Excellent chapter. That's a good one.
The shields that guard the realms of men.
Very good. And I like how, you know, because they kind of made it sound like they were kind of apolitical. You know, they don't care what's going on. Our party is the wall and the crazy shit going on above it.
Is a singular honor for any northerner. For it was in the north, some 8,000 years ago, that the first man drove back the White Walkers, erected the wall, and established the sworn brotherhood that would guard the realm and its people.
I do like that there are a lot of alliances, though. You know, it sounds like at least back then people would make agreements.
No longer commands the widespread respect and admiration it once did. While House Stark and other houses in the northern regions continue to recognize its vital importance to the safety and stability of the realm, this view is not shared by the powerful houses of the southern kingdoms or their subjects.
And you get to feel that in the show, right? That they're like, whatever, whatever's going on at the wall, fine, but we're not really concerned about it.
Admittedly, the current Night's Watch is a shadow of its former glory. Their numbers have dwindled to less than 1,000. Of the 19 castles along the wall, only 3 are functional.
19
the Shadow
castles?
Tower, Castle Black, and East Watch by the Sea. And the Watch's mandate of adding to the wall has been abandoned entirely.
3 functional.
There are barely enough resources to maintain it.
So Castle Black's the main one, though, right?
Recruiting officers, known as Wandering Crows, scour the dungeons and slums of the realm in hope of finding men to fill the ranks. While there is still the occasional highborn volunteer, the newest recruits are almost entirely made up of lowly criminals. Thieves, rapists, and murderers, sentenced to the wall as punishment for their crimes. The decline of this once fabled order is troubling, as the danger it guards against is all too real. While the White Walkers haven't been seen or heard from in ages, and may very well be the stuff of myth.
Yeah, were they saying it was 1,000 years since they heard from the White Walkers, or thousands of years?
Have been a menace to the North and its people for generations. At certain points in history, the disparate wildling tribes have united behind a single leader, a king beyond the wall, and attempted large-scale attacks against the realm. But thanks to the resourceful and courageous men of the Night's Watch, these so-called kings were soundly defeated. While many have lost faith in the Night's Watch, the people of the North are steadfast in their belief that the Black Brothers will answer the call of duty. But with winter coming, diminished numbers, and a lack of widespread support, will they be ready?
There you go. Yep. Best way to say it. So low numbers, low interest in serving, and increased threats, and disregard from the South.
Long ago in the wintry north, an army of demons emerged from beneath the icy ground and
the
spread
voice.
darkness and despair across the land. Astride their monstrous spiders, flanked by giants, they wreaked havoc on the innocent, slaughtering thousands. All hope was lost until the fearless warriors of the First Night's Watch drove them back into the wintry mountains and built a magic wall to keep them from ever invading.
Okay, so he's calling it a magic wall then.
These stalwart brothers in black continue to protect us even to this day.
Because I said a minute ago there could be elements of magic or giants, you know, that contributed to building the wall.
An absurd lie.
Interesting.
A fairy tale spun by many a wet nurse in the north. To be sure, a
I didn't know.
wall does
Going along with what they said.
The triumph of engineering, perhaps, but not of magic. As for the Night's Watch,
My bad.
there may have been a time centuries ago when there was prestige and honor in the miserable monastic life of a black brother. But now, the wall has become a glorified penal colony, full of outcasts, criminals, and assorted ne'er-do-wells. Today, a typical man of the Night's Watch most likely started out a lowly beggar, or a rapist, or a village idiot. As for the few high-born watchmen, they either fought on the losing side of a war, or were disowned by their parents for one reason or another. Those who
Like
persist
Sam,
in defending the
for being a
Night's
coward.
Watch
His
will
dad
claim
told him
the
he had to go
Seven
up there.
Kingdoms need protection
Just sad,
from the wildling tribes of the far north.
nothing really shocks me when it comes to Game of Thrones, right?
Fear from those primitives. They're a nuisance, but not sophisticated or powerful enough to be a significant threat to the realm. And any talk of White Walkers returning with their armies of the dead and their giant spiders and their snarks is just that. Talk.
See, I like that we see the different perspectives. Old gods and the new, Bran and Catelyn. I like that we see the perspectives like,
of Westeros,
you know, they're venerable and we think that they're like, you know, heroes and like, this is ridiculous, magic schmagic, and there's no threats. We need to focus on the politics.
But there are some who still keep to the old way, worshipping the faceless gods of the children of the forest and the first men. The old gods are countless, nameless spirits of nature. In ancient times, the children of the forest carved faces in the trunks of the weirwood trees, which became sacred symbols of their faith. In time, the first men adopted the children's gods as their own. Most castles at that time contained a godswood with a weirwood or heart tree at its centre.
Okay.
Meanwhile, across the narrow sea, a new religion was born in the hills of Andalos.
See, this is why I have to stay away from cults, because I'm a smart guy, but you tell me a good story like the first children and all that,
and the
I
invasion
can be
of Westeros
convinced.
followed soon
Kind of like
after.
those trees, just saying.
The Andals sailed across the sea on ships armed with weapons of steel. Some warriors carved a seven-pointed star into their skin as a symbol of their new faith.
The invaders destroyed most of the weirwoods in the southern lands, slaughtered
really
the children
sad.
of the forest wherever they could find them, and conquered every kingdom of the first men.
Because I mean, I don't care what your religion is. I feel like that is kind of like
The faith of the seven
a
spread
bridge
like
too far
wildfire
when you
throughout the
destroy
land.
people's religious artifacts,
The seven
even
is
if
a
they seem
single
ridiculous to
deity with
you.
seven
You know,
aspects, each
that seems like
symbolising
something
a
that should be
different area
sacred,
of
even if
life.
you don't agree with their
But most
beliefs.
people refer to the seven as separate gods.
The mother is prayed to for mercy and watches over fertility, childbirth, and peace. The father sits in judgment over souls. The warrior is prayed to for protection, valor, and skill in battle. The crone is the symbol of wisdom and foresight. The smith watches over creation and craftsmanship. The maiden symbolizes purity, love, and beauty. Finally, there is the stranger, rarely prayed to, who represents death. The faith is highly organized and deeply influential in Westerosi politics and culture as the official religion of the monarchy. Worshippers gather in temples of the faith called septs. The seat of the faith
Seph.
is the Great Sept of Baelor, which is located in the capital city of King's Landing.
Still, in the north, where descendants of the first men dwell, worship of the old gods continues to this day.
Yeah.
And the sacred faces of the weirwood trees keep close watch over the faithful.
Still kind of creepy, though. I respect it, but it's creepy. The Field of Fire by Robb Stark.
The ascension
Robb
of
with two
Aegon
Bs.
Targaryen was confirmed, and the fate of the Seven Kingdoms sealed on the Field of Fire. Kings Loren Lannister of the Rock and Mern Gardener of the Reach stood against Aegon's invasion. They commanded a united force of 600 banners, 5,000 mounted knights, and 50,000 men at arms. Aegon's host was vastly outnumbered, and when the army of the two kings charged, the invaders turned heel and ran. But Andal Might was no match for Dragonflame. When Aegon unleashed all 3 of his dragons, 4,000 souls were horrendously burned alive on the battlefield, King Mern among them. Realizing all hope was lost, King Loren surrendered. The Starks of Winterfell had no intention of submitting to Targaryen rule. They had reigned as kings in the north since the days of the First Men and were determined to resist the Targaryen invaders, just as they had resisted the Andals thousands of years before. King Torrhen Stark led his army to the Red Fork just east of Riverrun, hoping to succeed where Lorne and Mern had failed. But when Torrhen saw the size of Aegon's now mighty host, along with his monstrous dragons, he knew he couldn't subject his followers to
the dragons are just... You don't get around that.
And swore fealty to Aegon, who allowed the Starks to maintain their lordship over the region as Lords Paramount and Wardens of the North.
See, again, another agreement. I like these alliances. That's good. Reasonable people.
Thousands of lives that day.
I mean, you know, murderers, killers, but still reasonable on some level.
As the king who knelt.
Okay, see, I hear a lot about them talking about the kneeling. You know what I mean? Like, I'll never kneel.
The days of the
kneel
were
before
numbered.
him, kneel before her.
One by one, their
kneeling is a
so-called
big deal.
kings were bending the knee or facing the
Bending
wrath
the knee,
of
there you
Aegon
go.
Targaryen. Aegon of Old Valyria. Aegon who was blood of the dragon. After defeating the Iron Men at Harrenhal and slaying the last of the Storm Kings, Aegon and his sisters, Rhaenys and Visenya, set their sights on other prizes. The gold mines of the Rock and the fertile lands
She-Ra
of the
vibes.
Reach.
Princess of Power.
King Loren Lannister of the Rock and King Mern Gardener of the Reach foolishly thought their combined armies could beat back the Targaryen host. They rode forth together, their proud banners flapping in the wind, and faced off against Aegon in a vast golden field of wheat. The two kings commanded a massive force of nearly 60,000, and it appeared the day was theirs. Until Aegon unleashed all 3 of his dragons for the first and only time.
Dragons again!
Each beast was named after the Valyrian gods of Aegon's forefathers. Visenya rode Vhagar.
I didn't really enjoy getting learned about the Valyrians. That was interesting.
Rhaenys rode Meraxes, whose jaws were big enough to swallow a horse whole. Greatest of all was Balerion the Black Dread, with fire dark as night and wings so huge whole towns were covered in shadow when he flew overhead. This magnificent creature was ridden by Aegon himself.
Of course.
4,000
Size
men
queen.
were bathed in glorious dragon flame that day, on what came to be known as the Field of Fire.
Yeah.
King Mern was among the
See,
dead.
again, I like that we
and
hear
House
from different
Gardener
perspectives,
died
you know?
with him.
His perspective is very different
His
than
stewards,
Rob's.
the Tyrells, surrendered his ancestral stronghold of Highgarden to Aegon, and were appointed Lords Paramount of the Reach and Wardens of the South. When Loren Lannister witnessed Mern's fate, he wisely bent the knee. Aegon spared Loren's life, and the Lannisters were made Lords Paramount of the Westerlands and Wardens of the West. After his triumph on the Field of Fire, Aegon's conquest was assured. In a short time, the so-called 7 kingdoms were melted down in the heat of the dragon's flame and transformed into a single realm.
There it is.
Aegon would forever be known as Aegon the Conqueror.
Aegon the Conqueror, yeah. I've got to watch House of Dragons. I want to watch it with Mark. I want to wait till we're done with Game of Thrones and watch House of Dragons.
At the mouth of the river
I guess we could technically work it in, but I don't know. I feel like we should take it one at a time.
It is home to the Citadel, where men and boys from throughout the kingdoms come to receive their training as maesters. Maesters
I incorrectly thought maesters were the religious leaders, but they're the
scholars, healers, and
scholars,
advisors to the
like you
nobility
say,
of the Seven Kingdoms. This venerable order of learned men dedicate their lives to serving the realm and are sworn to occupy a neutral position when it comes to power and politics.
Okay, so to be above
Upon
it then.
completing his training at the Citadel,
Or at least
and taking
removed
his
from it.
vows, a maester renounces his family name and takes a vow of celibacy. He is assigned to a castle or keep, and duty-bound to serve as its counselor and healer, even if control of the castle changes hands. A maester's allegiance is to the realm.
Yeah, we saw Grand Maester wasn't too celibate there in the Seven Kingdoms, or not Seven Kingdoms.
Forged from links of
What's it
different
called?
metals which he
King's
wears around
Landing.
his neck.
Hooking it up with
It is a reminder of his role as a
prostitutes.
servant of the realm and is never to be removed.
He's supposed to be the
A maester
high
forges
level
his
of
chain
example,
with
right?
study, and each link represents the mastery of a different kind of learning. For instance, a silver link signifies mastery of the medicinal arts. A golden link represents the study of money and accounting. An iron
that's
link
interesting.
indicates
Okay.
knowledge of warcraft. Ravenry is an especially important
Okay, I like
skill
that.
for a
I know
maester.
that the chains
As
all
it
meant
is he
something.
who
Each one,
breeds,
silver,
trains,
gold,
and
they had
maintains
meaning.
carrier
Okay,
ravens
that's cool.
for the delivering of messages throughout the land. There are some maesters who have earned a link forged of Valyrian steel. This signifies knowledge of the higher mysteries, commonly known as magic. Only one maester in 100 possesses such a link, as this field of study is frowned upon by many in the order.
I was about to say, I figured it was like forbidden,
It
you
is
know.
possible magic
or like you said,
may have
frowned
existed
upon.
for a time long ago, but most consider the higher mysteries to be long gone from this world. Service as a maester is a noble calling, one of vital importance to a prosperous realm. It is little wonder there are some who refer to the order as the Knights of the Mind.
It's cool. I like that. The Knights of the Mind. The Mad King or something right fast. I'm wondering about this.
As word of King Aerys' erratic and troubling behavior spread throughout
Oh, his
the Seven
Iron Throne. Look at that.
Lord Rickard Stark continued to serve his king faithfully as Warden of the North. The proud father of 4 children, his daughter Liane, was engaged to Robert Baratheon, the young lord of Storm's End.
Oh, they were engaged? Okay, I didn't know that.
Centuries
Maybe
of
they
peace
said that. I just
between
thought they
the
were just
North
together.
And the Iron Throne ended the day Rhaegar Targaryen, Prince of Dragonstone, abducted Liane.
Yes, yes.
Enraged, Brandon Stark rode to King's Landing, demanding the release of his sister and the death of Rhaegar.
Yeah.
Aerys arrested him for treason and called his father to come to the capital to ransom him.
Okay, right, because they burned him, right?
When Lord
We learned
Rickard
that.
complied, Aerys, now utterly mad, arrested him for treason as well. Lord Rickard demanded a trial by combat. Aerys declared fire the champion of House Targaryen, and had Lord Rickard suspended from the rafters of the throne room while pyromancers lit a blaze beneath him.
Okay, well, that's more
As he
specific than
burned,
the show said.
Brandon was brought into the throne room. A leather cord attached to a strangulation device was wrapped around his neck. Aerys told Brandon his father was a dead man, but there was a chance to save him. A longsword was placed on the floor just out of Brandon's reach, and the more he struggled
That's
to reach
just
it,
torture.
the more the cord tightened around
They're
his
choking
throat.
him.
Brandon Stark strangled himself, trying to free his father, who was roasted alive in his own armor.
That
the entire
horrifying.
court
That
stood
way
and
more
watched
detailed than
this
the show.
atrocity take place.
That's really bad.
Sir Jaime Lannister and the King's Guard among them.
That'd be my face right there.
The Mad King was reported to have laughed hysterically as these 2 noble men were tortured and brutally killed before him. Seeking to rid the world of all his supposed enemies, Aerys called for the head of Rickard's younger son, Eddard Stark, and Lyanna's betrothed, Robert Baratheon. He sent word to Lord John Arryn, who had fostered both young men at the Eyrie, to apprehend them. Instead,
John Arryn.
Lord Arryn joined houses Stark and Baratheon in rebellion.
Good.
Robert vowed to kill Rhaegar Targaryen and get his beloved Lyanna back.
That's a good story right there. That's really good.
Aerys Targaryen was the last of his name to sit on the Iron Throne.
Oh, hearing his voice
far
makes
and
you really
wide
miss
as
Robert
the
Baratheon.
Mad
I
King.
love that character.
His was a reign of
It's a
instability
really good
and
character for a very
terror.
short amount of time.
The Seven Kingdoms are well rid of him and his kind. Oh, he may have appeared to be a capable ruler at first, but that was due in no small part to his counselors, led by the hand of the king, Tywin Lannister. There may have been years of peace and prosperity during Aerys's reign, but it was Tywin who was really running the country as Aerys spiraled further and further into insanity. The dragon spawn were famous for losing their minds. It was the price they paid for centuries of keeping the bloodlines pure. And Aerys more than happily continued
AKA
the noble
incest.
sister-fucking tradition of his forefathers.
There we go, yeah. Put a fine point on it. Sister
As the
fucking.
years passed, Aerys's behavior became increasingly erratic. He cut himself so often on his Iron Throne, many referred to him as King Scab, though never to his face.
I haven't heard that before. King Scab.
It was rumored he had developed an obsession with wildfire, and was known to inflict horrific punishments on those he considered enemies, including burning them alive. As his paranoia and bloodlust grew, he had a bitter falling out with Lord Tywin, who had served the crown faithfully for 20 years. At least Tywin was able to leave the job with his life and fortunes intact. Subsequent hands of King
Tywin,
Aerys
yeah, it was the
weren't
hand of the
so
king. Okay,
fortunate.
right. The last hand of the king before
Then the Targaryens
Robert's
went
rebellion
too far.
unseated the Targaryens.
The Crown Prince Rhaegar abducted Lyanna Stark, daughter of Rickard Stark, the Lord of Winterfell. She was my betrothed. She was my beloved. Beautiful and spirited woman, and I loved her more than life itself. Rhaegar went south with Lyanna, hiding her away in Dorne. What harm he inflicted on the poor girl, the gods only know. Brandon Stark, Lyanna's eldest brother, was outraged. He rode to King's Landing to confront the king and demand
See, I love
his
this when they're
sister's safe
showing
return.
it from different angles and perspectives.
Instead,
So good.
Aerys had him executed. His father, Rickard Stark, as well. There wasn't much left to discuss after that.
But then you've got like Maester
Aerys feared
Ludwig,
their
who
loved
it was
ones
just
would
like very
seek
matter of
revenge
fact.
for what he did.
Here's what happened, you know?
He was right to be afraid.
Very cool.
Aerys wasted no time in calling for the heads of Brandon's younger brother, my friend Eddard Stark. And my head too, of course. I'm sorry he didn't come looking for it himself. Alongside John Arryn of the Vale, the man who fostered Ned and I as children, Baratheons, Starks, and Tullys all called their banners. Once our rebellion began,
The Tullys, those are the
Mad
fish, right?
King's
Not the
days
fish?
were
The
numbered.
Tullys? Is that their banner?
As Aerys Targaryen's behavior grew more and more erratic, the task of ruling the Seven Kingdoms fell to me, Tywin Lannister. I had served Aerys for nearly 20 years, and as a result, the realm had prospered. The royal coffers were full, the land was at peace. But Aerys
And
grew
my
increasingly
401k
hostile,
looked awesome.
jealous of the success many credited to me. My power and influence unnerved him. The captain of my personal guard, Sir Elin Payne, was once overheard making offhand comments regarding who was the true ruler of Westeros. When the king was given this information, he had Elin Payne's tongue ripped out with hot pincers.
Yeah.
It was my desire
that
to
checks
unite
out.
the houses of Lannister and Targaryen through marriage. My daughter Cersei would marry Aerys' eldest son, Prince Rhaegar. Such a union made perfect sense for all parties.
So Robert
However,
was supposed to be with Lyanna,
Aerys' senses had
and
begun to
Cersei
leave
was supposed to be
him
with
quite some
Rhaegar.
time earlier.
And in the end,
Instead of
Rhaegar ran off
uniting
with
the royal
Lyanna,
family with
kidnapped
its
her,
most
took her,
loyal
whatever,
and powerful
and then Robert
ally,
ended up with Cersei. So it's just a bunch
Aerys
of
chose
keep it
instead
shuffle there,
to
right?
insult my family, indicating that such a match was beneath Rhaegar. Instead, he chose Elia Martell of Dorne to be Rhaegar's wife. As if to rub salt in my wounds, Ares appointed Jaime, my son, to the King's Guard. The King's Guard may be an honor for lesser families than ours, but it is a lifetime appointment that forces him to renounce all family holdings.
Oh, I see.
This creates a difficulty in naming an heir to Casterly Rock. But Ares knew all that. I had grown tired of the King's constant provocation. Thus,
so he's
I
crazy.
resigned my
So
post
look at those
of
nails.
Ares'
Got some
hand
long nails.
and returned to Casterly Rock with my considerable forces. When Robert Baratheon rebelled against the throne, Ares grew fearful that I would join with Robert's forces and rise against him. He thought himself clever and kept Jaime very close, as if warning me. He sunk deeper and deeper into delusion, paranoia, and violence. I've heard it said he became obsessed with wildfire, a substance which, once lit, cannot be extinguished. Convinced he had enemies all around him, he wouldn't allow blades in his presence, save for those of his king's guard.
Those nails, that's crazy. I'm
Alas,
going for a Guinness record.
That proved to be his undoing.
This is really great. So Viserys again.
The Targaryen dynasty united the Seven Kingdoms and lasted nearly 3 centuries. It was a dynasty forged in fire, sealed in blood, and destroyed by rebellion. The Targaryens are blood of the dragon, descended from the nobility of ancient Valyria, a once mighty empire in the east. When the cataclysmic doom laid waste to Valyria and its people, the Targaryens survived, having settled on the island fortress of Dragonstone years before. They remained there for a century, until the rise of Aegon the Conqueror. Instead of attempting to reclaim the eastern lands of his ancestors, Aegon sailed west for the Seven Kingdoms, his sisters Visenya and Rhaenys at his side. To keep the bloodlines pure, Aegon continued the custom of his Valyrian ancestors and took both of his sisters to wife. Together, they came ashore on the eastern coast of Westeros, their blazon a dragon with 3 heads, representing Aegon and his sister wives.
Oh, okay. So not the 3 dragons.
Fire and blood.
Him and his sisters.
While their host was small in comparison to the armies of Westeros that awaited them, Aegon and his sisters had a secret weapon. The last of the dragons. He conquered every kingdom save Dorne, which eventually bowed to Targaryen rule a century later. He had the swords of his enemies melted down by the fiery breath of his dragon, Balerion the Black Dread, and forged into the Iron Throne. The capital city of King's Landing was built on the eastern coast, where Aegon and his sisters first came ashore. And Aegon ordered the construction of a royal castle on its highest hill, the Red Keep.
The Red Keep.
For 300
I love
years,
that name, by the way, the Red Keep.
dynasty
That's cool.
stayed strong in the face of rebellion, civil war, and plague. But the line of dragon kings was broken when my father, Aerys Targaryen, the second of his name, was overthrown in rebellion. My father was betrayed and slaughtered by Ser Jaime Lannister, a member of his own Kingsguard.
Kingslayer.
His son and heir, my brother Rhaegar, perished on the field of battle at the hands of Robert Baratheon, who claimed the Iron Throne for himself. And so today, the only surviving members of the storied Targaryen dynasty are myself, Prince Viserys, rightful King of the Andals, and ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, and my
he got
sister,
his golden crown.
Daenerys. We were spirited
Bit of a
away to the
hothead,
free
but,
cities
you
of
know.
the East by loyalists.
That's what you asked for, dude.
Here we have lived in exile ever since, dreaming of a day when we will cross the narrow sea and take back my father's throne.
I mean, I know you got to start somewhere, but like, this is so interesting to learn the backstory of what we came into in season 1. It's like, no wonder there's so many
Rebellion.
like heightened emotions.
The crimes of House Targaryen were too heinous to go unanswered.
Heinous.
The noble houses of Baratheon, Stark, and Arryn united to oppose and overthrow the line of the cursed Dragon Kings. While Ned Stark and Arryn secured an alliance with the Tullys of Riverrun, I called the banners of Storm's End and rode out in force against the Mad King and his minions. Gods, those were some battles. Our first victory.
Robert gets off on the fighting, right?
Where I faced off against an army of
he's a warrior at heart. He loves it.
Battles in a single day.
So probably as king, he was kind of pressed, you know, having nothing to do but just sit around. I mean, like, yeah, he loved his wine and his hose, but I feel like his heart truly was in the fighting. And plus, when the love of his life died, he's like, yeah, whatever.
My army was pursued north by Eris's army and took refuge in the stony sept in the Riverlands.
But I feel like that's kind of common a lot of times with generals that become, you know, kings or presidents.
A signal to the
they have a hard time,
battle that was to come.
you know, settling into the politics and the quiet, you know, machinations of that versus the raw fighting of when they were, you know, on the battlefield.
Into the city. Gods, what a day that was. It's now known as the Battle of the Bells. We overwhelmed the Mad King's forces and sent them scampering back to King's Landing. Eris's son, Rhaegar, who started the whole damn thing, finally emerged from hiding in the south and assembled his own army to face us. As for the Mad King, he must have been pissing himself. The battle that would decide the fate of the Seven Kingdoms occurred at the crossing of the Green Fork of the Trident River.
Oh, okay. I didn't know any of this.
Rhaegar commanded the royal host, which was some 40,000 strong. My forces were outnumbered by nearly 5,000 men, but that didn't matter. They were fresh, but we were battle-hardened and had justice on our side. As the battle raged around us, I faced off with Rhaegar, the stag and the dragon right there in the ford of the river. I fought with the fury of 10 men, raining blow after blow upon that
with the stag. I like the way his helmet represents that.
Warhammer in his chest. I hit him so hard the rubies on his armor broke free, flinging them into the stream. They call it the Ruby Ford now. With that scum Rhaegar dead and the royal army shattered, our next move was to make for King's Landing. But I'd sustained a few wounds in the battle and was unable to ride. I sent Ned Stark to the capital to face the Mad King and make him pay for his crimes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Like, all we ever hear is that they fight, you know, or they fought together. It's cool to know what the roles were.
The Targaryens, blood of the dragon, and the last of old Valyria, were loved by their subjects and admired far and wide as the greatest dynasty in the history of the Western world. But the peace and prosperity of nearly 3 centuries of Targaryen rule was shattered by the usurper, Robert Baratheon, and his band of traitors. House Baratheon owed its very existence to the Targaryens. Was it not Aegon the Dragon himself who elevated the bastard Orys Baratheon in the War of Conquest? And what of the Starks, the Lannisters, the Aarons of the Vale? All had been spared and allowed to keep their lands when Aegon could easily have wiped them out. Centuries later, the usurper and his lackeys repaid Aegon's benevolence with treachery. There are some who dare to claim Robert and his allies had reason to rebel.
You know that, right? Like
he's
burning people to death.
Prince stole the usurper's lady love.
I mean, I get we all have an angle on this, but, you know,
murdered Rickard Stark and his son without just cause. Whether these charges are true or not, it doesn't matter. The dragon answers to no one. Ares' good
he's an
name
absolutist,
has been
right?
besmirched in the years
he's
since
like, whatever
the
the dragon decides,
he's been called a dangerous
how things should be.
A monster, a tyrant that brought his tragic end upon himself. Lies! My father was a victim of weaklings in his council, lackwits who failed him in his hour of need and let the rebellion spin out of control.
Okay,
but it was not enough. The royal army was crushed at the Battle of the Trident. It was there the valiant Rhaegar met Robert in single combat, but the gods betrayed him, and he perished by the usurper's hand. As the field of fire had marked the end of the Andal centuries before, the the Battle of the Trident seemed to herald the end of the Dragon Kings. When word reached the capital of my brother Rhaegar's death, my father Aerys moved to protect me, as I was the surviving heir to the throne. He sent me to the island fortress of Dragonstone, along with my mother, Queen Rhaela, who was great with child. But as my father, my king,
I kind of thought he and Daenerys were twins.
Prepared to defend his
I guess that makes sense
that
that he's the older one.
Little did he know of the horrors and betrayals that awaited him and our family.
Yeah.
Ours is the fury. These are the words of the Black Stag of Baratheon. A battle cry echoed throughout the land in rebellion when I, Robert Baratheon, the first of his name, seized the Iron Throne from the Mad King Aerys Targaryen, ending a dynasty nearly 300 years old. House Baratheon was born in the Wars of Conquest, when Aegon the Dragon invaded Westeros. Aegon sent his commander, Orys Baratheon, to take Storm's End. Argilac the Arrogant, the
Storm's End, that's the one that survived, right?
Left the safety
the
of his
7th
stronghold
castle that made
and
it.
met the Baratheon warlord in open battle. Argilac was soundly defeated, and Orys took his lands, his holdings, and his daughter. Orys was said to be a half-brother to Aegon Targaryen. If this were true, a little blood of the dragon mingled with that of the stag in those days. The seat of House Baratheon is Storm's End, a legendary keep raised in the Age of Heroes. It overlooks Shipbreaker's Bay, where legend has it that Durin, the first Storm King, raised the keep with the aid of Bran the Builder of House Stark, forging a centuries-long connection with the Stormlands and the North. After Aegon's conquest of the Seven Kingdoms, the Baratheons remained loyal enough to the crown, while Targaryen kings came and went. But loyalty has its limits. When
I love the angles on this, the perspectives, right?
Abducted Lyanna Stark,
and it just goes to show you that any kind of history, written is contingent upon who's writing it.
We raised our banners, Baratheon, Stark, Jon Arryn, and the Tullys, united in rebellion against Rhaegar and his father, the Mad King. We were victorious and took the Iron Throne. That bit of dragon blood in my veins came in well, as it made me a distant relation to the Targaryen dynasty blood of my long-lost ancestor, Orys.
That's kind of cool. I didn't know any of that.
I took it. I sit on the Iron Throne. I rule the Seven Kingdoms from the Red Keep.
So Robert had a little bit of dragon blood in him. Good to know. Definitely didn't know that.
Robert Baratheon's victory at the Trident was a turning point in the war for the Iron Throne. While it was clear the gods were smiling on the rebel forces, Aerys Targaryen still held the Red Keep at King's Landing. As Robert was wounded and unable to ride, it was up to Eddard Stark to make for the capital and force the Mad King to give up the throne. Lord Stark reached the city gates to find that Tywin Lannister, Lord of Casterly Rock, had already sacked the city in Robert's Main. House Lannister had remained neutral up to this point, ignoring requests for help from both the Crown and the rebels. Now that Robert's eventual victory was assured, it seemed Lord Tywin had finally chosen a side. Lord Eddard was horrified by what he saw when he entered the city.
Yeah,
Homes looted and burned, women raped, scores of innocent citizens killed. Disgusted, he led his force up Visenya's hill to the Red Keep. Upon entering the throne room, he found King Aerys lying in a pool of blood, dead by the hand of his own sworn King's Guard, Jaime Lannister, who sat brazenly upon the throne.
Oh, so Jaime was sitting on the throne. I didn't know that.
Of Queen Rhaela.
I don't remember hearing
Eddard
that.
was informed the Queen and her son.
And see, I thought Daenerys was already born when they left.
Had been spirited away to Dragonstone before the Lannisters arrived, but other members of the royal family were not as fortunate.
Right.
Elia, Martell of Dawn, who was the wife of Prince Rhaegar, had been raped and murdered by Sir Crigor Clegane, on Lord Tywin's orders. Sir Gregor and his man had also butchered...
He's a mountain, right? This is the mountain?
When Robert was well enough to reach the capital, Lord Eddard demanded the Lannisters answer for their heinous crimes. Robert refused, and sent him south to relieve the Baratheon stronghold of Storm's End, which was still under siege by forces loyal to the crown. Whatever words passed between the two old friends are known only to them. But Lord Eddard is said to have...
Tell us, that's why we're here.
In anger.
Get Robert back on the
Later,
microphone.
Let
him tell us.
He appointed Jon Arryn as Hand of the King. Lord Arryn's first order of business was to broker a truce with the Martells of Dorne, who were outraged by the brutal murder of Princess Elia and her children. Following the death of Lyanna Stark, who had been betrothed to Robert, Houses Baratheon and Lannister were joined in marriage when the new king took Tywin Lannister's eldest daughter Cersei as his queen. As for Eddard Stark, he returned to his stronghold in Winterfell, forever haunted by his sister's death and the shameful way that Robert had secured his throne.
I love Winterfell. So cool.
For our rebellion to succeed, King's Landing had to be taken forcefully. No one was foolish enough to believe that Aerys was going to hand his crown over peacefully.
Right.
The Mad King's reign
Motherfucker's burning
needed to
people, of
end.
course. He's
What
going to hand
Tywin
over everything.
Lannister's
Here's the keys,
forces did
you know.
was unfortunate,
Jiggle that
but it was
lock on the back
necessary to
door because it
secure the
sticks.
Iron
No, of
Throne
course not. You got to
and
kill
bring
him.
peace and justice to the Seven Kingdoms. My glorious victory at the Trident left me wounded, but I sent my personal maester to attend to Sir Barristan Selmy instead. His wounds were more severe. Even though Sir Barristan was a member of Aerys's Kingsguard and fought on the opposing side, that man's bravery and loyalty was something to behold. But this meant my wounds would take longer to heal, and I couldn't ride to King's Landing myself. I sent the one man I trusted over anyone else in this world, Ned Stark, in my place. Had I been able to ride, perhaps I could have reached King's Landing sooner and prevented some of the violence that occurred when the Lannisters entered the city. Still, what Lord Tywin did was for the greater good. Even what happened to Princess Elia and her children. Babies or no, theirs was the same cursed blood that flowed within the Mad King's veins. They were dragon spawn and couldn't be allowed to survive.
Yeah, see, Robert didn't give a shit. He's like, just kill him.
Loyal subjects.
All the Targaryens, kill him.
Ned with his damn northern honor. He and I had our first major fight over the deaths of the Targaryen children. Ned called it murder. Murder. It was war. It was war.
That is true.
Lord
There's supposedly
Stark
different rules for
demanded
war,
that
right?
the Lannisters be held responsible for their crimes.
Because they're going to have
Was it
to
a
be, because
crime to
otherwise
put an end to a family of
people wouldn't be able to do
lunatics
anything
born
to
of
do.
incest?
From what I understand, that's how they justify it
still
anyway.
Won't blame
'Cause it's
Tywin.
Under war
Instead,
times.
I sent Ned Stark south to finish off the remaining Targaryen loyalists. It was only Lyanna Stark's death that reconciled us. Ned had lost his sister. I had lost my betrothed and beloved. We shared that sad bond together, Ned and I. Through it, our friendship was made strong again. As for the Mad
that's good to know. It's
King's
interesting. I like that story. So that's how they came back
heirs,
together then, because of
those that were able to
Ned's
scurry
sister
away
and
in the
Robert's
face of my
former
fury
fiance.
now live somewhere across the narrow sea. They had best stay there. If they ever set foot in Westeros again, they will face the king's justice.
You know what that means.
Rhaegar Targaryen lay dead on the banks of the Trident, his royal army shattered and in retreat. The days of the Dragon Kings were clearly numbered. Until that moment, it would have been foolish to commit Casterly Rock to either the Crown or the Rebellion.
Yeah, you
What
kind
would
of want
our
to see where this
family have
goes,
to
right?
gain in supporting a raving madman?
Looking out for number one.
Or in entering a crusade to put Robert Baratheon on the Iron Throne. But chaos benefits no one. It was time for House Lannister to do what it could to ensure a return of peace and prosperity to the land. I, Tywin Lannister, brought 10,000 Lannister troops to the gates of King's Landing in order to bring the bloodshed to a quick and decisive conclusion. King Aerys had been sending ravens for months, begging for my support to end the uprising. In a way, his pleas had been answered. As I had suspected, Aerys opened the city gates and welcomed my men. Our plan was clear. Crush Aerys' remaining bannermen and remove the remnants of the royal family as quickly and efficiently as possible. Any alternative meant years of further war and a fragmented 7 kingdoms. Our means were bloody, but the results speak for themselves. As for Aerys, it is true he met his fate at the hands of my son. Aerys had kept Jaime close during the rebellion, thinking himself clever in keeping my son as a hostage.
Oh, that's Jaime stabbing him from behind, right? Yeah, he stabbed him in the back.
The rebel cause.
There's been a lot said about that. I remember he and I think Ned even had a conversation about that.
When the time came,
from behind.
Jaime did his duty as a Lannister and drove his sword into the Mad King's back. With that, Robert Baratheon's crown was secured. The new king recognized our role in his ascension to the throne, just as he recognized how useful the might and riches of Casterly Rock would be if he wanted to keep it. Mm-hmm. To that end, I offered my daughter Cersei as his queen.
There you go.
Had Aerys not spurned this same offer years earlier, perhaps things would have worked out differently. With Robert and Cersei crowned as king and queen of the 7 kingdoms, it was a new day.
Yeah, I can see where that's a good union. I mean, that on paper, that all makes sense with Cersei and Robert. Like, that's like the dream union, you know?
And the lion.
Yeah, exactly. Sucks they kind of hate each other, but whatever.
The Battle of the Trident may have been an important...
Because he couldn't forget Liane, of course.
But it was the treachery.
But I feel like Cersei did have feelings for him.
Lannister that
complicated by the love for her brother.
Dynasty. My father, King Aerys, had ever been a friend to the Lions of the Rock. Aerys graciously brought Tywin to court, making him the youngest hand of the king in history. He gave him power. He gave him respect. He made it possible for Tywin to restore House Lannister to glory. Aerys and Tywin governed side by side for 20 prosperous years.
Oh, okay.
Still, when the usurper called his banners in rebellion, Tywin Lannister ignored his king's pleas for help and stayed holed up in his stronghold of Casterly Rock. In time, my brother, Prince Rhaegar, was dead. The realm was in turmoil, and the usurper's forces were said to be riding for King's Landing. What a glorious sight it must have been when a force of 10,000 Lannister men showed up at the gate of the capital with Lord Tywin at their head, pledging support to his beleaguered king. Aerys opened the gates for his old friend. Instead, Lannister and his men proceeded to plunder and destroy the city that he had called home for decades. As the capital
they keep showing the same image of that woman, like
Jaime like, Lannister, son of Lord Tywin, proved every bit as treacherous. He killed my father, the king, at the foot of the Iron Throne. The Lannisters entered the Red Keep, and Tywin ordered the deaths of the rest of the royal family. It is said Princess Rhaenys was found cowering under her father's bed and put to the sword. She was only a child. As for Rhaegar's widow, Elliott, she was forced to watch as Lannister thugs dashed her baby son's head against a wall before being raped and murdered herself. As I was the heir to my father's throne, I had been spirited away to Dragonstone with my mother, Queen Rhaela, who was with child. As a raging summer storm battered the island fortress and destroyed the Targaryen fleet as it lay at anchor, my sister, Daenerys, was born.
Ah, okay, here we go.
Giving birth. Now,
Okay, I wonder what happened to the queen. So
17
she died giving
years
birth.
later,
Interesting.
The rightful king still lives in exile.
He's still wearing the Targaryen merch.
The reckoning is coming.
Still got the cape.
I will sail west as Aegon the Dragon did centuries before. I will take back my father's throne with blood and fire. And I will punish the treacherous dogs who sought to destroy my family. And the people shall rejoice.
But you won't, Blanche. Catelyn, what up,
In
girl?
the snow-capped mountains of the moon, standing high above the rich lands of the Vale, stands the Eyrie. A storied and impregnable fortress.
Who else thinks the moon door is badass? Scary as shit. I would want to go down it, but I love that as a plot device. The moon door, I think, is just so interesting.
The oldest noble families in Westeros.
So interesting.
Their sigil, a soaring falcon over a crescent moon. Their words, as high as honor. The Arryns are direct descendants of the Andal invaders, who sailed across the narrow sea and came ashore at the Fingers. According to legend, Sir Artus Arryn, known as the Winged Knight, soared through the sky atop a giant falcon, landing on the peak of the highest mountain, where he defeated the Griffin King in battle. It was the Andal's first great victory over the First Men, and Sir Artus was duly rewarded. He was declared King of the Mountain and the Vale, and the region was renamed the Vale of Arryn. Thousands of years later, Aegon the Conqueror arrived in Westeros. House Arryn bent the knee to Aegon and his dragons, and were allowed to maintain the control of the region as Lords Paramount of the Vale and Wardens of the East. Over the centuries, House Arryn remained loyal to the Targaryen dynasty, until Lord Jon Arryn joined with houses Baratheon and Stark in rebellion against Mad King Aerys.
So they really all did come together to fight off the Targaryens.
Robert named Lord Jon Hand of the King,
particular,
a position he held until his mysterious death.
On the far western coast of the continent, high atop a rocky promontory overlooking the Sunset Sea, sits Casterly Rock, ancestral seat of House Lannister. Below it lies Lannisport, one of the great cities of Westeros, a center for trade, culture, and the great Lannister fleet.
And one badass gift shop.
There are a number of gold and silver mines in the Westerlands, making it the richest region in all of Westeros. One of the most productive mines lies beneath Casterly Rock itself, making House Lannister the wealthiest of all the noble houses. This allows House Lannister to finance many endeavors of other noble houses. Even the king himself has sought credit from Casterly Rock from time to time. We Lannisters claim our descent from the Andal invaders, and through the female bloodline, Lan the Clever. According to the legend, Lan, using only his wits, won Casterly Rock from the noble house of Casterly
back to Lan the Clever again.
During the Age of Heroes. The Lannisters reigned as kings of the Rock for thousands of years, and worked to make it the envy of the rest of the Seven Kingdoms. Our time as kings ended, however, when Aegon Targaryen, otherwise known as Aegon the Conqueror, arrived in Westeros with his army. The last king of the Rock, King Loren Lannister, joined forces with King Mern Gardener, the king of the Reach. Together, with 60,000 men, they met the Targaryen host in open battle. History tells us that Aegon unleashed all 3 of his dragons.
So Aegon really shook shit up, because it feels like everything was kind of like organized and kind of all set up, and then he came in and really threw a monkey wrench and everything.
Gardener turned to ash,
and most people just bent the knee, so to speak,
both
using
the
their
threat
terms.
And opportunity the Targaryens represented, Loren wisely surrendered and aided Aegon in his further conquest of Westeros. The Lannisters were thus appointed Lords Paramount of the Westerlands and Wardens of the West.
So they're the West.
We hold to this day.
Yeah, the Arryns out in the east, Starks in the north.
Clear, though.
then the
It is
Lannisters out
neither
west.
luck nor royal favor that makes our house prosperous. There have been times in our history where some have thought us weak, lazy, or opulent. My father, Titus Lannister, nearly bankrupted our house with his poor investments, and allowed himself to be mocked openly at court. When our vassal, the Rains of Castamere, dared to rise up against the Lannisters, they learned how dangerous it can be to taunt a lion. I, Tywin Lannister, led the assault on Castamere to
I like how
put
he
down
keeps
this
saying, I,
rebellion.
Tywin Lannister.
I made an example
It's his
of
own
them
name, like, I,
to
Tywin
anyone
Lannister.
who doubts our might. They even made a quaint song about the fates of the Rains of Castamere. Sadly, there are no Rains left to hear it. Today, the Golden Lion of Lannister is rightly admired and feared throughout the Seven Kingdoms. Our words are, hear me roar. But there are other words that should be remembered when crossing a Lion of Casterly Rock. A Lannister always pays his debts.
There it is. The tagline for Family Lannister.
The Starks of Winterfell trace their descent to the first men in the Age of Heroes. The family's founder was Brandon the Builder, who, in the aftermath of the Long Night, helped establish the Night's Watch. Legend has it he enlisted
I feel like the
aid of
Starks
Jon
are
and the
presented
powerful magic
as the
of children of
family
the forest to raise the
that
mighty
is the
war.
most pure. You know what I mean? They really are
protected the realm
portrayed
for
that way, I feel
generations.
like, you know?
He went on to build
They all
the
have their
ancestral
foibles
seat
like
of
everybody
Winterfell
else, but they're
and
seen
reigned
as
the
being
first king in the
good,
north.
you know?
The Starks reigned as kings for thousands of years, even withstanding the invasion of the Andals. As the southern kingdoms fell and the children of the forest were driven away, the north stood strong, maintaining its religious customs and its way of life. Eventually, the reign of the Kings of Winter came to an end with the coming of Aegon the Conqueror. After Aegon and his dragons destroyed the combined armies of the Reach and the Rock at the Field of Fire, King Torrhen Stark bent the knee and swore fealty to the Targaryen dynasty in order to spare the
He bent the knee
destruction
too.
of
Everyone
Winterfell.
bent the knee to the Targaryens. Wow. Dragons
He
really
was
are
forever after
effective.
known as the king who knelt.
I think that's what we're taking away from
As
this.
a reward for his submission, Aegon named Torrhen Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North.
The Starks take great pride in their history and traditions. It is one of the few noble houses that still keeps the old gods.
Yep.
A sacred
Right.
weirwood tree looms large in Winterfell's godswood. Its ancestral sword, Ice, was forged in ancient Valyria and has been passed down through the generations. House Stark remains steadfast in its support of the Night's Watch, even as the once illustrious order has fallen on hard times. Much like their sigil, the Grey Direwolf, House Stark is the stuff of legend in the north.
Specifically
and
the
throughout
Grey
Seven
Direwolf.
Kingdoms.
Good to know.
And their family words, winter is coming,
Serve as a reminder of their beginnings in the wake of the long night. And a grim
And there it is.
portent of
Winter
things
is
to come.
coming from the very beginning. Wow. Really well done. I got to say, that was good. That was good. Okay, so let's talk about it then. I want to kind of take this from two perspectives. One, I would say from the technical perspective of the program itself, they didn't have to do this. You know, like you could have just done the show and you could have said, you know, these are the episodes, you know, go research on your own time, read the books if you want to learn more. So I really appreciate them taking the time to construct this, the actors, the illustrations, putting it all together in such a way that if you are interested in learning more but don't want to take the time to read, you can just watch this, and this is going to color in a lot of those gaps that you otherwise would not have known the background on. And then that kind of leads me into the actual content itself of what they, you know, were showing us here, which is a really cool, I guess, telling of the history going way back, centuries back. And they covered it, I thought, so well and so well done that it never got boring. I mean, I yawned a little bit, but only because I'm old and tired, not because it was boring. But I thought it was very effective the way they had the characters, you know, the actors, of course, playing the characters, kind of covering all of these stories for us. And I love the way they showed the different perspectives. You know, we started off with the Children of the Forest, going back to like way, way, way in the beginning, and then the Andals and sort of how all that went down. But such a huge amount of time was spent focusing on the Targaryens, specifically with Aegon the Conqueror, and how much that really just disrupted everything. Not that, but he disrupted everything. You know, you had so many families and so many organizations that were running things peacefully and efficiently, and everybody was happy. And then he just came in with his dragons and his crazy town show. And then everyone, as they said, bent the knee, you know, and kind of like fell in line. But as we, of course, know, people rose up against him. And specifically because the Mad King lost his shit and decided to like basically wreak havoc on the entire region. And people were like, you know what? Dragons are not, enough is enough. We got to like, you know, figure out a different way. So, and of course, then that led us right into the aftermath of all of this, which was Game of Thrones season 1. So I have to say, I really feel like it is time well spent for anyone who is coming into the Game of Thrones story, like I would, like a lot of people who had not read the books, to at least watch this. It's not long. It's only like, a little over an hour. And again, it's done in such a great way. It's presented so well, right? With the actors reading their pieces of it, and it broken up into like, you know, these little pockets of the history of the region, that it's just very entertaining as well as educational. And again, I would say my favorite part of the way they did this was having the actual actors as their characters tell their perspectives on history. And the reason I like that so much, besides that it keeps it interesting, is because it again reinforces why each side or each family, if you want to go that route, is so sort of takes it personally as far as why they fight this fight and believe the way they believe, going all the way from religion to the politics to the threat beyond the wall and everything in between. So yeah, very well done. Thank you guys so much for recommending it. For all of you who brought this to my attention, I didn't even know. And I'm so glad I've watched this. I hope that Mark can join me for the future ones. We'll see. Again, it wasn't because of lack of interest tonight for this one. It was just because he had other things going on. He wasn't able to actually sit down and do this. But I've made a lot of notes, and I will share all this information with him so that we can have a more comprehensive overview going into season 2 and all of the story that's to come there. So once again, thank all of you for watching with me tonight. I hope that this was fun for you as well. Let me know in the comments anything that I missed, anything you want to point out that you especially liked about this. But in the meantime, I hope you have a great rest of the day / night, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble.